Walker Deibel. So now we got that right. Walker is actually the best-selling author of the book Buy Then Build: How Acquisitions Entrepreneurs Outsmart the Startup Game, which released to critical acclaim, including being recognized by Forbes as one of the top 7 books of all entrepreneurs must read. It is currently being used in multiple universities as a textbook for entrepreneurship through acquisition. Walker acquired 7 companies outright over a 10-year period, resulting in having operated in many industries, including manufacturing, fulfillment, software, education, entertainment, and e-commerce. He's also started companies from scratch, enjoyed 2 exits, and made almost 24 minority acquisitions. He's a serial entrepreneur and a partner with Quiet Light, where he helps online-based businesses exit, and the creator of Acquisitions Lab, which helps first-time business buyers with world-class education, coaching, tools, and community to create the world's first do-it-with-you buy-side advisory experience. One of the first things I always ask everybody is kind of tell us your origin story. How did you get into this space? What made you become an acquisitions entrepreneur?
Ron, it's because I'm a really bad entrepreneur. Let's just call it what it is, right? Okay, let's kind of take it from the top. I mean, first of all, I like the origin story, like just going all the way back. All right. If you were to take sort of my dad's side of the family and my mom's side of the family, I grew up in a situation where my dad's side of the family was all small business owners, right? And when I say small business owner, I mean that. It's what was going on in the 70s and 80s and 90s. There wasn't like this entrepreneurship thing. We didn't call it that, right? And then on my mom's side, it was a lot of academics and artists, right? And so it's this sort of I don't know, not dichotomy, but sort of a straddle, if you will, in my family of 2 sides of the world. And so I grew up in that space, and it was all about like how can we create something cool, but also make it sort of economically sustainable, right? And that was sort of like the ultimate background if I really got into it. Um, from there, what I would say is let's just go ahead and fast forward to business school. All right, so I was getting my MBA, and you know what? There's something I need to mention before that. This is an origin story after all, right?
Right.
I ended up majoring in college in religious studies and English literature. Okay. And everyone's like, what do you want to do with that? And I'm like, well, I'm going into business. And they're like, why don't you study business? And I'm like, well, that's stupid. It's like buy low, sell high. Like, what else do you want to know? Like, manage people. And the thing is, if you really look into it, more CEOs have an English degree than any other degree. I went corporate. Okay. I went corporate. I did the thing. And I got a job, and just I'm a fairly driven individual and achievement driven, and so I absolutely did fantastic there. But ultimately, I decided, why am I working so hard to build somebody else's company, to build somebody else's equity, to build somebody else's brand? And my kind of aha moment came when corporate was doing a really bad job communicating to the sales team. And I realized, and what I did was I built a model that helped explain what they were trying to do, so that the salespeople could punch into the model all of the different variables to punch out essentially how to make, and what levels, what units they needed to move in order to change that. Okay, so what activities do I need to do to make the money that I want? That's it. I could not buy a $400,000 online business, but I could buy an $8 million printing company.
What makes it unique? What's different between what you guys do at that shop
Yeah.
than your standard LBO model where, somebody can go out and go to the SBA and ask the SBA how to help them buy, or Score and say, hey,
Yeah.
Score, I want to buy a business. Can you help me fill out the loan docs? Right. There's,
Yeah.
there's, there's more to it than filling out loan docs.
Yeah.
And so let's go there.
Yeah. Let me also say that I'm not going to take credit for this, but I will say that I came up with the term acquisition entrepreneur myself, right? I'm not going to go so far as to say I coined it, but like, walking around, in Buy Then Build, you'll see things like, the AE matrix, okay, which is, all of the different growth opportunities in in an acquisition, right? And there's really 4 quadrants.
Right.
It took me 36 months to get the damn quadrant right. So I spent a lot of time walking around and whiteboarding things. And I did sort of come up with acquisition entrepreneurship just in contrast, right? So like a real estate entrepreneur, or like a, like a digital online entrepreneur, or like a startup entrepreneur, right? And that's why. Anyway, the point is you don't have to be rich. The money is readily available. Number two, with the retiring baby boomers, we're looking at an estimated $10 trillion in business value that needs to change hands, okay, by the end of the decade, okay? And then with the proliferation of the internet, you've got all of these other sort of alternative online assets, all right? And then if you pair them together, it's kind of interesting, right? Because it's sort of like when the baby boomers found their product market fit and created their businesses, the internet didn't exist. If you wanted to go to an Ivy League business school, okay, you've got to take the GMAT as the exam, right? Now, what are you going to do? Like go out and do Kaplan or Princeton Review, just like everyone else who's going to KU, right? That's where I went undergrad, right? So
Right.
it's like what you can't use the same materials, right? And so what they did was they created an elite program that was specifically geared for success in that segment. The point is that if we're going to engineer success, what I want to do is create world-class curriculum. I want to create group coaching that is meaningful. Okay. I want to create the tools and support in order to get that done. And the biggest thing is we need a community that's actually going to do it.
What is there? Are they still in the group? Are they still working with you? Or are they still working on the build?
Yeah. That's funny. You're asking. So within our group, they ended up self-creating something called the Closers Circle. And I was in EO for a number of years, and I'm starting to notice it's starting to look a lot like that. And they just decided, hey, we all want to get together, and they're sort of forcing my hand to doing like a value acceleration kind of conference. And I'm going to call it more of a mastermind than a conference, because it's obviously a mini group within a group. But we've just booked the dates, and we've got a location, and like that's happening. And so it's the first time I've ever put on a conference, but that's about to happen. So it's emerging, and the concept was to call it something like boardroom, because it's sort of like all the people coming together to work on their business. So it's at the early stages. We'll see what happens there.
So are there any industries that you like for your students and stuff you avoid like a plague, or is it just kind of open for whatever they're willing to look at?
Interesting. So well, look, I mean, what you're kind of harping on is, what the sort of high level thing that we obviously cover is going to be Porter's 5 forces, right? And just sort of trying to understand, like, where does the power lie in this equation? And so when you buy a company, you need to understand like who has the power. And if you buy an Amazon business, right, I think me as a reseller, we were the first people to figure out, wait a minute, Amazon is worse than Walmart, right? And then all of a sudden, then it was the content sites, right? And so the big question is, are the individual brands next? Are they going to find out that Amazon's horrible to work with? Maybe. I mean their fulfillment costs certainly make them the worst fulfillment company to work with on the planet. But I think it's yet to be seen. I'll stay away from that rabbit hole. But the thing is that like what you get wrong is that the day after you buy that company, you are the CEO of that company. You are the owner of that company. You are the head and the brain of that company. You are spearheading where it's going. Okay. The magic is not in de-risking the acquisition. The magic is in figuring out what the hell you bring to the table as the CEO and jumping in and taking that company to the next level. And you can't see that when you're looking at a business or an industry. Okay. You are the most important part of the equation, not the business.